Emily Thompson stood on the edge of the old pier, the salty wind whipping her face and sending her unbrushed hair fluttering like worn-out flags on a forgotten ship. In front of her loomed the once grand yacht, now rusting in silence, tethered to a life it no longer lived. The yacht was a ghost, its bones creaking and hollow, covered in peeling paint, barnacles clinging to its underbelly, and shattered windows exposing its cold interior to the unforgiving sea air. But to Emily, it wasn't just a rusting heap. It was a blank canvas, a challenge, a chance at a new life. She had purchased the yacht at an auction for the price of a used car, scraping together every penny she had left after years of scraping by as a single mother. People called her foolish, reckless, delusional. How could a woman with no nautical experience, no repair skills, and no financial backup think she could take on such a monumental task? But they didn't know Emily. They didn't know the fire that kept burning inside her after losing everything. When her husband died in a car crash 3 years ago, her world shattered like the windshield that took his life. One moment she was a happy wife, a stay-at-home mom in a cozy suburban house, and the next moment she was drowning in debt, grief, and bills that arrived like predators sensing weakness. She sold their home, moved into a tiny apartment, and took on 2 jobs, waitressing during the day, cleaning offices at night, just to keep the lights on and her son fed. Her dreams faded, her smile dimmed, but she never let her son Liam see the cracks. She promised herself she would never become bitter, no matter how cruel life got. Liam deserved better. And then one day, as she walked past the marina on her way to her cleaning job, she saw it. The yacht sat alone, distant from the rest, almost ashamed of its condition. Something about it called to her. It was broken, beaten by time and tide, yet still afloat, still defiant. She felt a strange kinship with it a week later. She bought it at a public auction, not knowing a thing about yachts, but knowing everything about second chances. She named it Hope's Horizon. Every day after her shifts, she came to the marina and worked on it. She watched YouTube videos, read manuals, asked questions from grumpy old sailors who laughed at her but answered anyway. Her fingers, once used to turning book pages and folding laundry, became skilled at twisting wrenches, replacing engine parts, stripping wires, and sanding down rust. Her muscles ached, her back screamed in protest, but she pressed on. She came to love the smell of grease, the way the metal yielded under her strength, the satisfaction of hearing an engine stutter to life after hours of troubleshooting. And through it all, Liam sat nearby on a lawn chair, drawing superheroes or doing homework, occasionally shouting, "You got this, Mom," whenever she looked ready to give up. The neighbors thought she was wasting her time. Strangers passed and shook their heads. But Emily didn't care. The yacht was her therapy, her symbol of defiance against the world that tried to tell her she wasn't enough. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, as the golden sun shimmered off the water, a luxury black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled into the lot across the dock. From it stepped a tall man in a crisp navy suit, polished shoes, and sunglasses that made it hard to read his eyes. He looked completely out of place, like he belonged at a gala or in a high-rise office, not among the barnacles and oil spills. But there he stood, hands in pockets, gazing at Emily as she balanced herself on the edge of the yacht's stern, covered in sweat and grime, wrench in hand. Swearing under her breath as she tried to loosen a bolt, he didn't say a word. He just watched, quietly, intently. Something about her presence froze him in place. Maybe it was her focus, maybe her determination, or maybe the way the setting sun cast a halo over her worn figure. He came back the next day, and the next. At first, she noticed the strange man from the corner of her eye, but paid him no mind. She had work to do. But on the 4th day, he finally spoke. "You know," he said, his voice deep but smooth like aged scotch, "that yacht used to sail through the Monaco coast. It was a masterpiece once." Emily, startled, looked up and wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her gloved hand. "Well, now it's mine, and it will be again." He chuckled, stepping a little closer. "You bought it?" "At auction," she replied, still cautious. "It's mine now, rust and all." He smiled, but didn't introduce himself. Instead, he nodded toward the engine hatch. "Looks like your fuel line's kinked. That's why it keeps choking." Emily blinked, caught off guard. "You know, boats. You could say that," he replied with a grin. "Mind if I take a look?" She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He climbed aboard with the grace of someone who had done it 100 times. He knelt beside her, unafraid of the grime, and started tracing the tubing with practiced hands. Together, they worked for hours, her suspicion melting into curiosity, his silence turning into admiration. He didn't act rich or entitled. He didn't gawk at her sweat or pity her calluses. He treated her like an equal. And strangely, Emily found herself smiling more that evening than she had in months. She never asked for his name. He never offered it. Their connection didn't need labels. Not yet. Over the next few weeks, he returned almost daily. They worked side by side, sometimes talking, sometimes just existing in a shared rhythm. He brought tools she didn't own, snacks for Liam, and knowledge she soaked up like sunlight. She learned he had once sailed the Mediterranean, had loved boats since he was a boy, and preferred the ocean to any boardroom. She never imagined a man like him so composed, so refined, would find joy in getting grease under his nails just to help a stranger. But there he was, and without meaning to, she started to wait for him each day. Not because she needed help, but because his presence filled the silent cracks in her spirit. One day, Liam whispered, "Mom, I think he likes you." She had just laughed, brushing it off. After all, why would someone like him fall for a single mom in overalls who talked to bolts like they were her enemies? But deep inside, her heart stirred. She caught the way he looked at her when she was focused, the way he listened to her stories about her late husband without judgment, the way he'd sneak glances when she laughed without realizing it. He never tried to flirt, never made her uncomfortable. His respect was his charm. One evening, as they stood watching the sunset reflect off the no-glossy hull, Emily whispered, "Why do you keep coming back?" He turned to her, thoughtful. "Because watching you bring this boat back to life reminds me that broken things aren't always meant to be discarded. Sometimes they just need someone who sees their worth." That night, as she lay in bed, Emily thought about his words, and for the first time in a long time, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she was still someone worth falling for. Alexander Grayson had built empires from scratch, negotiated billion-dollar deals with the flick of a pen, and sat atop lists most men could only dream of reaching. But nothing in his perfectly controlled, meticulously curated life had ever shaken him, quite like the sight of Emily Thompson, hunched over an engine, grease on her cheeks, eyes burning with defiance against a world that had clearly tried to break her. He hadn't planned to visit the marina that day, foot near that yacht since the divorce 5 years ago, when he gave it up, along with the pain it carried. That yacht had been his pride, his escape, and eventually his prison, a constant reminder of the woman who left him, not because he failed to love her, but because his world never made space for real love to grow. He thought he'd never look at it again, never care what became of it. But fate doesn't care about plans. He had stopped by the coast for a business lunch when something compelled him to drive down to the old marina. Past he thought he'd buried, and there she was, a woman so out of place among the rust and rot, yet so perfectly aligned with it, as if she were born to rebuild the broken. He stayed longer than intended, then came back the next day and the next. Each time he told himself it was just curiosity, admiration even, but deep inside he knew better. Watching her work became the highlight of his days. There was something undeniably magnetic about her, not just her beauty, though it was impossible to ignore the way her sun-kissed skin glowed under the golden light, or the way her hazel eyes sparked when she was focused, but more than that, it was her grit, her perseverance, her refusal to be small despite everything life had thrown at her. Emily wasn't just fixing a boat, she was rebuilding herself, and in the process, unknowingly restoring something broken inside him too. He remembered the first time he spoke to her. He hadn't planned on revealing anything about himself, hadn't even thought she'd acknowledge him, but she did, and the way she spoke, blunt, direct, unapologetic, it caught him off guard. He wasn't used to women like her. The women in his world wore perfection like armor, spoke in careful layers of diplomacy, and often had more interest in his wealth than in him. But Emily didn't care who he was. She saw a man offering help, and she treated him as an equal. That was the moment he knew he couldn't stay away. He would show up in jeans and rolled-up sleeves, bringing coffee or a new part she couldn't afford. Watching her light up with gratitude, she never vocalized, but always expressed with her eyes. He began to look forward to her sarcastic jokes, her loud laughter, the way she teased him when he got something wrong. She was real in a world where everything he touched had become artificial. But as the days turned to weeks, the guilt gnawed at him like a silent storm beneath calm waters, because Emily didn't know who he really was. She didn't know that the man helping her fix the yacht was actually its former owner. The billionaire whose name grazed magazines, whose face had flashed across TV interviews, whose decisions moved markets. He'd introduced himself only as Alex, the casual, stripped-down version of a man who needed, more than anything, to just feel human again. Telling her the truth had always been the plan, but each day he waited, the harder it became. What if she thought he was manipulating her? What if she thought he was playing some cruel game? What if the fragile trust they had built shattered the moment she found out? He couldn't bear the thought. He had fallen in love with her completely, without warning, and beyond reason. He admired how she never played the victim, how fiercely she protected her son, how she didn't ask for anyone's pity. She reminded him of the man he used to be before the wealth, before the cold meetings and fake smiles, before he lost sight of what actually mattered. She made him feel again, and not just lust or interest, but deep, aching connection, the kind that doesn't fade. And he knew, in the quiet hours when he lay awake at night thinking of her smile, that he didn't just want to help her finish the yacht, he wanted to be part of whatever came after. But the truth had to come out. He couldn't keep hiding. So one evening, when the yacht was nearly restored, the paint fresh and the decks polished, he invited her to the bow and stood there, staring out at the horizon with her. The wind was soft, the sky a canvas of orange and pink. Liam was asleep, in the car, and the moment felt right. "Emily," he began, his voice unusually tentative, "there's something I need to tell you." She looked at him with concern, sensing the shift in his tone. He hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "My name isn't just Alex, it's Alexander Grayson. I used to own this yacht." Her eyes widened, confusion flickering across her face. "What do you mean you owned it? I bought it years ago. It was mine before my divorce. Before I gave it up, I donated it to the marina and walked away. Seeing you work on it brought back everything, and I didn't know how to tell you without ruining this." Silence fell between them, thick and uncertain. Emily stared at him, trying to process the revelation. 1,000 emotions played across her face: shock, betrayal, disbelief. But then she spoke. "So why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't want you to see me as the billionaire who dropped in to save the day," he said quietly. "I wanted you to know me. The real me. Not the one in magazines. Just a man who saw something incredible in you." She crossed her arms, not angry, but guarded. "You lied to me. I didn't mean to," he said, stepping closer. "Was afraid that the moment you knew, you'd stop looking at me the same way. But everything else, the work, the conversations, the connection, that was real. You have to believe that." Emily looked down at her hands, calloused and stained with the work of weeks. She had poured her soul into that yacht, and somewhere, along the way, into the man standing in front of her, she didn't know what to feel. Part of her wanted to scream, to push him away for hiding the truth. But another part, the part that had slowly opened up to him, couldn't ignore how he had never once treated her as less. He had worked beside her, sweat beside her, listened to her, respected her. He could have bought her a new yacht, offered her money, made grand gestures, but he didn't. He helped her on her terms, never overstepping. That meant something. "I don't know what to say," she finally whispered. "Then don't say anything," he said. "Just know this, I fell in love with you, Emily. Not because you fixed a yacht, because you fixed something in me I didn't even realize was broken. I own. It's about who we are together." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. The truth was heavy, but it didn't erase the weeks of trust they had built. And deep down, she knew people don't choose who they fall in love with, but they do choose what they do with that love. She didn't answer him that night. Instead, she walked down the dock, heart racing, mind spinning. But the next morning he was there, coffee in hand, sleeves rolled up, ready to work, like always. And this time when she looked at him, she smiled. Not because she had forgiven him completely, not because everything was suddenly perfect, but because love, real love, is forged not in perfection, but in the fire of imperfections embraced. Over the next few months, the yacht was completed. Emily, Alexander, and Liam took it out to sea for the first time, the wind filling the sails, the sun warming their faces, and laughter echoing over the waves. Emily had gone from scraping by to steering her own destiny. Alexander had gone from lonely billionaire to a man grounded in something deeper than wealth. They were sailing into a new life, one built not on fairy tales, but on sweat, second chances, and a love strong enough to weather any storm.